Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Like I always say, we know we're winning in the public discussion, in the public debate, when CNN is forced to actually do its job. When the Democrats are cruising high, CNN feels invincible. They could say anything, do anything, and get away with it because there's either nothing to lose and Trump is already president, so might as well act as partisan and horrifying as possible, or the opposite is true. It's a Democrat era, a left-wing Marxist era, where Democrats aren't exactly worried about losing, and so CNN, again, is in this position where they feel invincible. I mean, they're on the winning side. They're on the winning team, so why would they have to capitulate? And then, of course, that creates another scenario when Democrats are clearly on the decline, where it's obvious that their grasp on power is about to slip, and then in this situation, all of a sudden, CNN starts doing its job. They start raising serious concerns and ringing alarm bells. This situation is the only time where the Clinton News Network actually says the truth. We've covered it a million times. Trump goes up in the polls, Joe Biden starts to tank, Joe Biden's in big political trouble, there's a scandal, the Afghanistan thing, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, CNN is giving sober analysis. Well, that's exactly what's going on here. All of a sudden, the panic is hitting the media as they realize things aren't exactly going according to plan. In other words, the desperation panic button has been tapped, or rather, it's being frickin' viciously slapped and slammed. It's being spammed. They're smacking the crap out of it. This time, it's CNN's Fareed Zakaria, who actually we spoke about yesterday, how he was putting it out there that Joe Biden should start adopting Donald Trump's policy proposals and policy stances, at least on the issue of immigration. Well, Fareed Zakaria's panic continues as he is now admitting the truth about the Trump trials. Let me show you guys exactly what I mean by that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, let's take a look at what Mr. Fareed Zakaria had to say. It's a 5-minute video. I'll try to condense it in the most important points. Just take a look.
I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would. Trump is now leading in almost all the swing states, but behind those numbers lie even more troubling details. As someone worried about the prospects of a second Trump term, I think it's best to be honest about reality. But there's no denying that the party seems more openly divided than it has been in decades. Only 33% of Americans said they approved of Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war, which is now opposed both by people who think he is too soft and people who think he is too hard on Israel. Meanwhile, Republicans seem to be uniting behind Trump. Whatever opposition he faced in the primaries has largely melted away. And the trials against him keep him in the spotlight, infuriate his base, who sees him as a martyr, and even may serve to make him the object of some sympathy among people in general who believe that his prosecutors are politically motivated. This happens to be true, in my opinion. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump. A majority of Americans are skeptical that Trump will be able to get a fair trial, according to a CNN poll. And I haven't even mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Cornel West and Jill Stein, all of whom would probably take votes away from Biden. But trend lines are not working in Biden's favor. He needs to do something bold and dramatic to seize the initiative, on asylum policy, for example, and reverse these numbers. The one that troubles me the most is on the question of who was the more competent. Joe Biden led Donald Trump by 9 points in 2020, but Trump now leads by 16 points in January 2024. That 25-point shift could be a reflection of people's sense that the president's age is affecting his capacity to govern. And there's very little that Joe Biden can do now to change that perception.
A couple of quotes that I really want to focus on. The first is pretty much proof of my claim. This CNN clown says, quote, "I have to admit, none of this is playing out as I thought it would." In other words, a not-so-subtle admission that their plan isn't working. They were hoping that the Trump trials would finally take down the bad orange man. But now they're finally admitting that none of it's working, and now, all of a sudden, as it's all backfiring in their face, they finally admit the truth. Why it's backfiring. Why it's not working as expected. Because the charges, the cases themselves, are partisan in nature, are selective, bias. He says, and this is a direct quote, you just heard it, "In my opinion, I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump." I mean, wow. That is a stunning admission from the left-wing media. And that is the type of sober admission that would only happen, that you would only hear following the initial statement that he made, that it's, quote, "not playing out as they thought it would." Now all of a sudden, they want to tell the truth about what's going on. Now they admit that they went too far, that it was a mistake to politicize the justice system in an effort to take down your political opponent. He just admitted the whole thing. He admitted that that was the play, that was the plan. And we've been saying this forever, but we were crazy. You're an extremist. You're questioning the credibility of the American justice system? Now, maybe not the whole justice system, but certainly the Democrat justice system in highly partisan, out of control leftist districts, and of course cities and states. From a Republican perspective, the indictment of former President Donald Trump by Letitia James, Fani Willis, Jack Smith, and of course Alvin Bragg is seen as highly politically motivated. Why would that be? Oh, are we crazy? No, it's actually very simple. First off, let's just talk about the base partisan bias. Alvin Bragg is a Democrat who is perceived as using his prosecutorial power selectively to target a prominent Republican figure, Donald Trump. Just as Letitia James, he was elected, honestly, by a voter mandate to do so. He's a Democrat elected by highly partisan Democrats in an 80+% Democrat city under an explicit demand of targeting and going after Joe Biden's top political rival. The second element, timing and context. Let's talk about the timing of the charges. Trump remains the leading figure in the Republican Party. And of course, back during the time where the indictment started, he was the top potential candidate for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. And obviously, the timing of these indictments suggest a deliberate attempt to tarnish his image, erode his support among his base through legal and media battles rather than genuine legal concerns. Again, the base criticism, not only of the Fani Willis case, the Letitia James case, as well as the two Jack Smith cases and this Alvin Bragg case, the question we keep asking is, where is the crime? There's no actual crime defined.
Well, I don't think he should be treated differently at all, Dana, but I certainly think he is being treated differently. The only thing that Alvin Bragg, the New York prosecutors team, thinks Donald Trump did wrong is that he ran for president in 2024 and he looks to be on the cusp of victory. That is the only thing that this is ultimately about. If you look at the underlying argument of the case, they can't even identify what it is that Donald Trump did. They said he committed a paperwork violation in the service of a crime, but they won't even specify the crime that he allegedly committed. And I think that when you look at all of these attacks on Donald Trump, you have to be honest with yourself and say, this is not about law and this is not about justice. This is about the fact that President Joe Biden has a failed record as commander-in-chief and leader of this country, and the Democrats can't talk about that. So what they're doing is putting these trials out there and saying, focus on this, not on the fact that the world is on fire and the fact that you have gotten poorer under the presidency of Joe Biden.
Yeah. They can't even specify the crime. This is true about almost every other case. They've twisted and manipulated old laws and statutes in their desperate attempt to go after the former president. In Letitia James's case, there was no victim of fraud. You kind of need a victim. You need somebody who was defrauded in order to prove fraud, now don't you? Where is the crime? In the January 6th case, they used an old corporate statute that was used against Enron, or that spawned after the Enron scandal, and the whole fake electors scheme thing, well again, no actual description of crimes being committed, just a RICO case. Just apply RICO and make it stick. It's all complete nonsense. The clear partisan bias of the individuals going after President Trump, the timing, the context, in the midst of a nomination process, in the midst of an election. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the whole Stormy Daniels thing, we've passed the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations has already expired. Why didn't New York prosecutors take this case before it expired? If it was such an egregious, horrible felony, why wasn't Donald Trump impeached if he committed such a horrible, felonious act? Well, because it wasn't election season and it wasn't clear that Donald Trump was going to be the de facto Republican nominee. They were hoping that Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley would overtake Donald Trump, take control of the Republican Party, but when that didn't happen, boom, the indictments hit. This hush money case revolves around alleged hush money payments which Trump argues were private transactions not unprecedented in the realm of wealthy individuals and celebrities. He's not the only person who's paid hush money to somebody who essentially was attempting to blackmail him as he was trying to run for president. And so the legal action against these payments is viewed as an overreach. They are using the law for political ends rather than addressing actual clear criminal behavior. It's all backfiring so spectacularly, and now Democrats are finally smelling the coffee. I've been saying this forever. I've been saying it since I started this YouTube channel. The worst thing that you could do is underestimate your opponent. And in the world of politics, it's not just about underestimating your opponent, but underestimating the intelligence of the average voter, viewer, and Democratic participant. This indictment is seen as a way to divert public attention from issues affecting Democrat leaders. The less than stellar economic and foreign policy track record, and of course immigration track record of this administration, or the multiple controversies surrounding Democrat leadership and their ilk, this constant focus and all of this overreach in their targeting of former President Donald Trump is perceived as Democrats trying to avoid scrutiny of their horrible track record. In other words, the voters, the viewers, are not as stupid as Democrats think they are. And finally, maybe a little bit too late, CNN is realizing that. At least some people at CNN. Fareed Zakaria finally admits the obvious truth out loud that this indictment would have never happened if the target wasn't Donald Trump. In other words, he admits that the Democrats are weaponizing the justice system to go after their political rival. He is admitting that the top brass of the Democrat Party are a bunch of corrupt, petty tyrants attempting to imprison their political opponent. Just let that sink in. Absolutely frickin' insane. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.